Hey everyone, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, depending on where you're joining us from here today. My name is Agama Jisuobu, and I'm the community lead for Unit Masters program. It's such a pleasure to have you here today. I'm so excited, especially for everyone who made it through to the end of the Unit Masters Cohort 13 program. I'd like to start by saying congratulations and welcome to today's demo workshop section. Okay, so today we have with us here Alexandros. He'll be our presenter for today's demo workshop session. Alexandros is the partnership and grants manager of Unit Masters and is the marketing manager of Blockchain Netherlands Foundation. Alexandros holds a bachelor's in international business management, and he is currently pursuing a master's in blockchain and digital currency. He holds the Chartered Blockchain Expert Certificate, and his professional background is in PR, marketing, event organization, and open public blockchains. Alexandros fell in love with cryptocurrency because he values individualism, freedom, financial inclusivity, and censorship-resistant apolitical money, as he believes that a handful of politicians, no matter the country, cannot represent and decide for whole nations of millions of people. He hopes by using this technology, he can help build a better financial world than the one we currently live in. It's always a pleasure to have you here with us, Alexandros, and today, Alexandros will be speaking about the Unit network platform. And please go ahead if you're ready.
Well, thank you, Akama, very much for the wonderful introduction. Hello, everyone. It's nice to see you here as well. From me, congratulations, since this is the last, let's say, session of the whole Masters. It's really nice to see you all here and your dedication, because it's also one day before, the New Year's Eve. So it's really nice to see you all. And as Agama said, we're going to go through the Unit platform, and I'm going to go through it with you, and we can kind of see what's the use case behind it, of course, as well. Let me share my screen. Can you all see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. Before we start, I will go on Launch Up, of course. Then I'll have to put in email and password. But has everyone here created a Unit network account? There is how do you call it? There is a raise hand figure there. Can everyone who does not have an account raise their hand? Lona doesn't have one. Akama, could you send her a link? No, Lona stopped raising her hand. So I suppose everyone has an account, right? Otherwise, please unmute yourself and say you do not have it, in case you do not know how to raise the hand, because it's also hidden within the functions of Zoom. Let's wait a few seconds. Okay, so I would assume that everyone has created their own accounts. So let me enter one of my own. Okay, wonderful. So as you can see here, this is probably, you've seen it already. This is basically the how do you call it? The Unit network platform. And you kind of can see here, let's say, the balance of a person, your own, let's say, basically. Mine is staken, but we're going to see it afterwards. And here we can see that you have like the wallet, right? We're going to go through the other ones before. You kind of have the wallet where you kind of can see how much of whatever token you have is here. You have the staking, basically, where you can see how many units have you staken or whatever else you have staken here, basically. You have the transfer function, which is basically transferring to whatever, let's say, cryptocurrency unit or Bitcoin or Ethereum, Polkadot, and so forth up to SDU, or also even another token, right? You kind of can write, if there is another token, you can write the name of the token. Let's say a Gamma has created a token, for instance, and I write, let's say, a Gamma token quantity max, let's say 100, and then I write the username of the person within the Unity network or their email, and I can transfer it, right? And then you can transfer it either to a user or a token bank. We're going to talk a bit about what a token bank is afterwards. Or you can also deposit your own money, of course, here as well. You can see Bitcoin, ETH, whatever you would basically would like to, or you can also withdraw, of course, as well. Any questions so far? Because what I'm planning to do is go through all of them, and each, let's say, section, we're going to have like maybe a few questions in case there are any. Are there any questions from people so far?
No
Okay.
questions.
I have a question.
Yeah, tell me.
Okay.
This is my auntie. I have a question.
Wait, who is talking? Because I cannot see.
This
I
is my
cannot see
auntie.
you.
It's my auntie. I have a question.
Okay, yeah, please tell me.
Is this the same one that we sign in, the unit masters? Is this the same one that we sign in and use to go to the course, to get to the course material? Or is this something
No.
different?
No, this is a bit different.
Oh, then I
You do not.
don't
You do
think
not
I
have.
have.
Okay, you do not have an account on Unity Network, then, right?
No, I don't think I do. No.
Okay,
The one
then
I have,
Mhm.
yes, what I have is the one that you sign into the course with, you know, so I don't think I do.
I see. I see. Then, Agama, could you please share a link so that she could also join, of course? Ganesh has raised his hand. Ganesh, could you unmute yourself and ask whatever question you may have?
Yeah, hi Alex. My question is like unit has got its own this unit token is belonging to unit network itself, right?
Yes, indeed.
So we studied that like any tech network having its own token is called coin.
Yep.
And like since unit has got its own what do you call currency, why it's called token, why not coin, is my question.
That's a good question, but you can also call it currency because Unity Network is a layer one blockchain, just like, let's say, how do you call it? Like, for instance, Ethereum, like Bitcoin, it's layer one, right? So you can also call it currency. So it's not, perhaps it was also my misapprehension of calling it token. You can also call it currency, of course, as well. Does that answer the question?
No, it should be called coin, is what my question. Shouldn't it be called coin instead of token?
I mean, that's a good question. So how it basically works is that you can call, so normally when you have a layer one blockchain, right? Let's say like Bitcoin, like Ethereum, you kind of have, you call, let's say, if you call Bitcoin, you call them currencies, right? And what the difference between unit and these layer ones is, in terms of token, of course, is the fact that although how do you call it? Although unit is a layer one, it is built on Polkadot, which is basically a layer zero, right? So you can call it token. I prefer to call it token, but you can also call it currency, right? So the difference here is that Bitcoin and Ethereum and, let's say, the other currencies do not have a layer zero like network and unit has. So what happens is that you're still a layer one of basically, but you have infrastructure, which is basically the how do you call it, the substrate infrastructure, which is the layer zero, and basically and Polkadot, and then you kind of start building layer ones on top of the layer zero. The other blockchains do not have a layer zero; they just have a layer one. And does that answer the question? So basically,
Yes, very much. Yeah,
Okay.
very much. Thank you, Alex.
okay, good. Any other? Well, I hope there are no other questions. Otherwise, like if you do have them, please put them in the chat, and then Agama could ask them afterwards. Now we can go to explore. Basically, here you can see all the tokens that have been basically created. You can see city tokens, you can see industry tokens, you can see cryptos, like for instance, the euro basically, and kind of like all the kind of tokens that have been created within the unit, right? And let's say if we go and say go to unit, basically, here you can kind of see everything. Wait, just before we continue, Mati, did you manage to create an account?
I think I'm in it because when I went to it, I saw my email address and my password, but for some reason, I'm gonna have to get in through another web page because it wouldn't let me go through. So I'm getting ready to try to do that now. I'll let you guys know in a few minutes.
Okay, great, thanks.
Thank you.
No worries. So here you can see the unit basically token, right? And you can see everything that you can see here. And this is basically quite interesting for you as well when you would like to create your own token, let's say, right? So what happens here is that you have the manager, well, unit in this case, which was the very first account created, I suppose, which was created 5 years ago on April 4th, 2017. You can see the supply and the circulating supply here is basically just like with Bitcoin, that there were only going to be created 21 million ever. This is basically together with unit, but instead of 21 million, we have 1 billion unit instead, right? Then you have the supply being circulated, meaning that this is the unit that has been that is in circulation now that you can buy. And within, let's say, the next basically years, you will have more and more units coming into circulation until these two numbers match. For the moment, as you can see, there are also 14% of the circulation is basically, well, available, right? You can see here as well the market cap, which is basically this that we have the market cap, which is 68 million for the moment, and the diluted market cap is basically the how do you call it, the hypothetical market cap we would have if all the unit tokens from that would ever exist would be in circulation, right? Here you can see the exchange price, which is basically the price of the units token that is now. You can see our website, slide deck, the pool value, of course, as well. Here we can also see all the, let's say, the social media. If I click, let's say, on Twitter, it should take, it should take us on our Twitter platform, and the rest with the other ones as well, right? So now we can also see here the community, how many people hold a unit, and how much of the percentage that is basically in circulation is being held by each person, let's say, right? You can see. So basically the point here, of course, as well, is the fact that you can basically see, how do you call it? That how much everyone basically holds, and it's much more transparent, let's say, than it would be in traditional, let's say, finance, right? Because in traditional finance, what happens is that you do not know how much circulation there is. Well, you kind of know how much circulation of the dollar, for instance, is, right? If you Google it, I haven't Googled it, but there should be something like how many dollars are in circulation right now. But the difference here is that with crypto, you have a ceiling. In units case, it's 1 billion. With Bitcoin, it's 21 million. And if we would go into very basic economics, what happens is that when you do not have a ceiling of something that you can produce, right, and you can produce as much as you want, then you basically create, let's say, a lot of money. And the fact that there is not so much demand for your money and you create more, right? Then basically the price or the value of your money goes basically down. And if you look at, let's say, the dollar or any other fiat currency, right, or any traditional currency, if you look at their value from 100 years ago, if you would like to Google it afterwards, you can see probably all of your national currencies have the same trajectory, more or less, which is downwards, right? For instance, I remember seeing that, for instance, the British pound was worth $7 100 years ago or something, and now, of course, it's worth 1.4 dollars. So you kind of see that the value of the pound has gone down, and the same goes with every single currency, right? This is because central banks are basically, printing, can basically print as much money as they want. So there is no supply cap in any kind of currency, right? So in that case, what happens is that your money gets always devalued, right? With unit or with Bitcoin, yes, for the moment it is, of course, volatile and everything. But the idea is, of course, that as more people, let's say, immigrate from the old system to the younger system, to the newer system, the price would go up until, let's say, all the money in the world has immigrated there, and then the how do you call it? The price would stabilize, let's say, right? That's more or less it. As I said, here you can see the community, how much everyone kind of like owns through the circulation, let's say, that we kind of have. Here you have the sale, right? So when you create, we'll go into create afterwards. When you create a token, you have to kind of sell it, and you kind of can put sort of like a price to it, right? I can create my own token. Let's say I can create, so I can create, let's say, the Alex token, right? The Alexandros token. And I can say, okay, guys, I'm going to sell you my token for $1 million each. I could do that, right? But no one is going to buy it, right? Because I can tell you, I can create, let's say, the utility of the token, why I created it. I kind of can come up, let's say, with any kind of way of creating it, but at the end of the day, of creating it, but no one is going to buy, or very few people in the world would buy my own token for 1 million, right? So you kind of start with a very small number in the beginning, so that people can kind of like, so that you sell it to people, and then people can buy it at a smaller amount, which basically, first of all, there are two things here to, of course, mitigate, right? Like finance is also the mitigation of risk, right? So there are two kinds of risks here. When you put a token that you want to sell into a high price, what happens is that people, let's say, okay, not 1 million, but let's say if I would tell you, I have created this token, I'm going to do this with it, would you buy it for $10,000, right? So if you would say yes, you would put $10,000 for each token, and then you would increase the risk that you are basically being exposed to, right? So you kind of get 10,000 per token. You may not have 10,000 first of all to put, but let's say you still put it, right? So if the price would afterwards, let's say, kind of like go down for whatever reason, you would let's say lose your money, of course, right? But when it comes to how do you call it? When it comes to smaller prices, let's say if it's just 1 cent or even less than a cent, then you're not putting as much money at risk for yourself. And at the same time, you kind of, from the other perspective, let's say from my economic perspective, you increase your risk, because when I create a venture, let's say when I create a startup and I create my own token as a business, let's say, as I said, the Alexandros token, you do not necessarily know if my business will succeed, right? So in the beginning, when you kind of get the token for a very small price, although you lower the risk of putting too much money into it. You increase your risk, your exposure risk, because you do not for sure know if, let's say, my venture will be successful, right? So when you buy my token at a smaller price, then you're increasing your risk, your appetite, let's say risk, right? But if if my business is going quite well, quite good, it's like let's say I create a lot of revenue and everything, then more people would buy, let's say, the token, because they kind of see the value in what I'm basically creating, right? And then the price would go up steadily. And then the people that see that my business is actually working and it's not a scam, or it's not that it produces, let's say, value, these people have less risk anymore, because, you know, the product or my idea has been tested, it works, it produces money, let's say. So people would kind of like buy it afterwards and it would increase the price. So what happens in this case is that the people, the community that supported you in the beginning, right, when they bought the currency at a fraction of a cent, let's say, would see their value increase, which means that they would become, how do you call it? They would be rewarded for the fact that they saw the value in your venture, and that they were one of the first people to kind of invest in your token. Then we have basically, let's say, the bank, right? So what the bank does is it's sort of like you have, let's say, in Unit's case, let's say you have 1 billion tokens, right? You can kind of, how do you call it? Time within the bank, when you go in the bank, you kind of can see like how, let's say, how do you call it? What kind of sales you would basically schedule, right? Because one thing, if you kind of look at traditional, let's say, VC firms or something, you have different sales, right? You can at first put all, let's say, the money in the circulation and it's just one round, or you kind of can have in the bank all, let's say, the money and release into the circulation steadily, depending on the demand, of course, so that people do not get, you know, their price up or down, or it doesn't fluctuate by much, basically. So this is how it kind of like works. And here also you can see like the team in terms of who basically is within, let's say, the team of Unit, who created basically the how do you call it? The the project from the very beginning. Basically, you can see their holdings as well. So everything is transparent. You can see the advisors here, who are the people that are advising, of course, as well. And here you can also see basically the treasury, right? So what the treasury does here, if we click on it, is basically it helps with basically backing the Unit token, right? So you can see here every single time that you kind of within Unit, whenever you basically create, let's say, a token, right, and you kind of fundraise for the token, a certain percentage of the money that you fundraised, in Unit's case, that was 13 million in the very beginning that we raised, and 10 million out of it went to our treasury, right? That's 90%, I think, out of the top of my head. It kind of automatically goes to the treasury balance. And well, now it's 3 million, of course, but this is because of the market fluctuation. As you kind of guys know, all the crypto tokens and the currencies went down. So of course, our treasury balance went down with it as well. And this is because our, let's say, treasury is backed by cryptocurrencies, right? Like the Unit token is also backed by cryptocurrencies. And you can see this, basically the treasury balance. If you add the value of all of this together, it should, I think, give you the same treasury balance here as well, right? Because everything that we have here is backed by these cryptocurrencies, as you can see, ADA, BNB, Bitcoin, Polkadot, Ethereum, Matic, Solana, and USD. The U, basically what it means is that because, you know, Bitcoin has its own blockchain, but in order to take Bitcoin and transfer it to our own blockchain, we have to, at least for the moment, wrap it, right? So the U stands for wrapped Bitcoin, basically. Yep, that's basically here. And here you can still see the whole, let's say, supply and all of this. And you also kind of see the lowest price here, right? So this is basically, if you go, let's say, to the financial market, if you go there, you kind of can see basically the book value and the speculated value, right? So with Bitcoin, with DOT, with all these cryptocurrencies, you kind of have what is called, at least for the moment, a speculative value, which is kind of like perceived value, right? Because people do not for the moment know for sure how much this technology is worth, right? So someone can buy it today and sell it, basically. It's kind of like speculative, right? What happens with unit is that although our unit token is basically worth 0.49 now as you know, per unit, this is our perceived value, right? But because of our treasury, even if all of this would go to zero, then basically our own how do you call it, our own token would never go to zero, but it would go to 0.0036, right? So this is 3 times lower than 1 cent. So it would never go to zero. And this is basically because of our treasury, which means that every single time that someone transacts within the unit network, this is also kind of like our business model, of course, as well, that whoever transacts with it, a certain percentage of the transaction fee goes to the bank and backs the unit token. So in that case, even if everything would go to zero, yes, the unit would suffer greatly from 0.49 cents that it is now. It would be 0.0036. But still, like from my perspective, all of these, you know, projects that we have backed our token with, I do not believe that they're going to zero, because, you know, they're valuable projects, and especially Bitcoin, I do not see it ever going to zero, despite what most economists say and what most older people say, because there are a lot of use cases for all of these tokens, but especially for Bitcoin, because it was the very first currency and we kind of already know its token economics. We can see their use cases, its use case, and how it's created in such a way that its price would always go up, let's say, after 4 years. This is more or less about the treasury, right? Here you can see here as well that you can exchange, let's say, you can take your dollars, let's say your USDU, which is basically the unit dollar, a stable coin, and you can exchange it for any other cryptocurrency, just like you would do in any other decentralized exchange. You can sell it, you can stake, you can unstake this, yep. And you kind of can see here again who has staked, who hasn't staked, how much, which is basically, again, you know, very transparent, generally speaking, on the blockchain, because normally you do not see this in a bank or in a traditional finance where everything is, you know, closed and you do not know what's going on, basically, right? And this is what happened with the crisis in 2008, if anyone remembers it to you, if anyone remembers, because what happened was that there was a lot of debt in the system, right? And no one foresaw it because everything is closed. And when the debt bubble burst, let's say, people didn't know who owned and what, right? But here, like with unit with Bitcoin, generally on the blockchain, you can see who owns what, right? So it's much more transparent, and it makes it much more, much less prone to corruption. Yes, you still have, let's say, SBF, Sam Bankman-Fried, and everything that happened with FTX, let's say, of course, and other scammers in the past. And you will still have scammers in the future as well, since it's a very new industry. But what happens is that all these scammers are centralized businesses, let's say, right? In a decentralized blockchain like Bitcoin or anything, there is no one for you to scam, because it's transparent and not controlled basically by anyone. So this is, oh yeah, we also have to go on community. Here you kind of can see, you can create polls, let's say, as a DAO. Let's say if you would like to ask your community questions or anything, or if they would like to make proposals as to changes in the, let's say in the DAO or in the business or anything else, you kind of can create proposals and everything. But this is, of course, still at it's very nascent stage. This is like, we're still working, of course, on the platform. It's still, how do you call it? It's still not 100% decentralized, since we haven't finished working on it, right? Because you have to always start centralized. Also, Satoshi started centralized because someone has to start working on the business. And once it's ready, like Bitcoin was, then you kind of throw it out and see if people would be interested in something like Bitcoin or unit, of course, right? But here you can see, of course, the polls that we kind of said. You can also see here contests that you kind of can create, let's say, if someone would, which is sort of like small jobs, right? Like this is just examples, right? Like 100 meter sprint. But let's say this one is these two are good examples. Let's say if someone would like to create or design a UI or UX, or create a logo for someone, or I don't know, code something or write something, or anything, basically, you kind of can create, let's say, a contest. You can write a new contest here and create it, of course. And this kind of helps with, how do you call it? Well, it's sort of like a job post, but it's more like as a freelancer kind of thing. You start with a small task, you create it, and here you can see the prize that you get. If you create a logo for someone, then they would give you, let's say, 100 unit in this case, right? So you can create your own here as well. And this is basically if you would create your own token, you would have the very same features, of course, as well, for people to do all this stuff, right? Then you have events here, and new events, of course, as well. If you would like to create, this is, let's say, as an example, World Unit Forum, 5 October, you can click and see the, how do you call it? When location online, if it was not online, it would say something like Elm Street 11, London, or something. I'm just coming up with addresses out of my mind for the moment, right? Then you have status, like whether it's active or not. You can see the date, of course, as well, and everything here. You can also apply as a speaker if that's a function that you can turn on or not. You can attend, you can add it to your calendar, of course, and everything. You can see what are the people that are attending it. Well, in this case, of course, the how do you call it? The event was on October 5th, 2021, but this is, of course, just an example for you to kind of have a visualization as well. And you can basically see also the, how do you call it? The program here, session 1, session 2, which room it would be, let's say, who would be the speaker, and these kinds of things, of course, as well. And the topic, here you see Ethereum, past, present, and the future, Russian crypto scene, GPYU, and also the speaker here. You can see all of these different topics, basically, and how it would basically work. But basically just like an event, right? That you have a schedule for. Then you kind of can create groups within each, let's say, how do you call it? Token, like groups that are basically communicating with one another. In this case, we have added, as an example, cohorts that we have had here, let's say before, unit cohort 9, let's say, and these kinds of examples. But if it is something, let's say, that you would think of it more like a Facebook group in some ways, right? Where you kind of have people together and among that are together for a cause. Let's say if it would be to rent some places. Let's say if you live in London and you have people, something like renting in London, and people could click on here, people from London or moving to London, click on it and see basically the people there, their posts and everything basically. Then you kind of have news within your community, within your own community, stories, all of these things, right? You can also have papers. Let's say if someone would like to do any research, whether it is on your own token or any other token, currency, or blockchain, or it doesn't necessarily need to be blockchain specific. It can be on something that is about literature, if people are more interested within your community on this, or any other paper, let's say. So this is more or less in terms of each token, right? How kind of the interface looks like. And when you create a token, what people can do within these tokens, what you can also offer to the people that are buying your own token. Are there any questions so far? And also let me check a little bit the time. We have 15 minutes, so I have to to be a bit more prepared now. So yes, but let's say we have 3 minutes. If there are any questions, like 1 or 2, and then we can go to the other ones.
There are a couple of questions here.
Tell me.
Okay, I'll just pick them one after the other. Okay, so I'm scrolling up.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Lona wants to know if any tokens created on the unit network show up on your dashboard, right, even when not in circulation. So she wants to know if any tokens created on the unit network shows up here, even when not in circulation.
It's an Explorer. You see Michael, who was speaking yesterday, he created his own token. If I create my own token, it should also appear here. You can write the name, let's say Michael, and it comes up, right? If I want to write, I don't know, Joe, there is a Joe token, you see? So, so it basically, whenever you create a token, it's, you see, you have hotel industry token, arts industry token. So whenever you create one, it should come up here, and you can write its name and it should come up basically.
Awesome. Okay, another question here is, are bank and treasury the same? That's from Ganesh. Ganesh wants to know if banks and treasury mean the same thing.
Not really. It's a good question, but the difference between a bank, wait, do you mean a bank within the units?
Yeah.
Cosmos, or like a traditional bank?
Ganesh, maybe you can tell us specifically which of the banks you were referring to. Okay, he says unit. The bank on unit.
The bank, yes. So the bank with the unit, it's more about announcing the sale of your token, right? So let's say you have, you say something like, my token will have, just like Bitcoin, 21 million in circulation, right? So one of the things that you can do is you sell 1 million, you within the bank, what you do is you create 1 million, you create this 21 million, let's say, and the first sale would be 1 million, right? So people buy it for a fraction of a cent or so, let's say, right? Then the second, for the second route, you would use the bank to add 1 million more into the circulation, basically, right? So that's what the bank does. The treasury, on the other hand, is automatically a certain percentage of, let's say, the transactions within the unit network that happen go into the treasury. It's 0.5% that goes there for each transaction, right? So if, let's say, you would send me $1 in a unit token, 0.5% of it, that would be half cent, would basically go into the unit treasury in order to back the unit token, and that's done automatically. So that's the two differences between them. I hope this answers the question that you had.
Okay.
So let's
another
continue,
question here.
let's continue, I hope. And then I hope we have like maybe 5 more minutes or so to, how do you call it? To go through everything, of course, through questions, of course, as well. Then in create, of course, you can create your own token. You can write, I don't know, let's say Polkadot2 and create it. So you kind of see here kind of like the supply or so, right? But this is still in, how do you call it? We're still, as I said, working on it and everything. So you kind of can see that it's not entirely, let's say, how do you call it? Perfect, but we're still working on it. And you kind of can see here again that I'm the manager. This is, well, Philosopher CEO is my, is kind of like the, how do you call it? The ID that I gave just when I registered here, when it was created and so forth. And you can, as you can see here, you have the sale, the bank, the treasury, and everything, of course, as well. As we saw, advisors, there are no advisors yet, but let's say, if I write Michael, let's say that we saw before, and I can add him as an advisor, then he would be seen here. I do not want to do that because this is just a dummy example, obviously, right? If I would like to add to the team, let's say if Agama would be on my team, I can write her own username. And you can kind of see also sort of like their token quantity here, cliff period and vest period. This means that as a team member, you kind of also get rewarded into tokens, right? So you kind of write Agama, let's say, of course, I do not know her username, maybe it's Agama or anything, is just an example. I can write that her token quantity would be 10.
It's right in the chat.
And so forth, yes, indeed. And well, I do not want to add you here because then, you know, you, how do you call it? You would be like, you would be reflected there, but it's just a dummy text, right? But then you can just click add team basically, and I would add Agama. Here, cliff period and vest period means that each, like, let's say the cliff period is how many months each token would be given to Agama, right? So instead of giving her all the 10 tokens immediately, because, you know, I can give to someone 100 tokens within the team, and I'm not sure if they will remain within the team, right? Maybe someone, I'm going to give them 100 tokens, they will take them, sell them, and go home, right? So then I'm liable for damage, and the person just got for 100 tokens richer, right? So cliff periods and vest period ensures that instead of giving every single token at the same time, that there are certain months or years, right? If you write 36 months, this is months, but 3 years, obviously, right? So this basically ensures that people, how do you call it? Get, let's say, this many tokens within, let's say, these many months. Let's say each month or each 36 months, Agama would get a certain percentage of the 10 tokens, maybe 2 tokens. And then this is basically also the vest period after, let's say, 36 months with 2 tokens. That would basically mean that in in 36 months, 150 months, I suppose, then, right, she would get all the tokens which they could she could then basically sell. So this is basically an insurance that if someone would come and become a team member, so that they do not get all the tokens up front and sell them and leave the team, right? Well, we do not have much time. We have still 10 minutes. I also want to go through questions and everything. So if you go to Vaults here, you kind of see, you kind of can choose whatever, let's say, how do you call it? Token or currency you would like to. You kind of can see here the vaults basically that the unit, like generally like unit has, which is basically sort of like the treasury that we kind of have, that there is basically, of course, as well. Here you go to profile. That's of course your own profile. You can go also on settings, and instead of philosopher CEO, I can write something else. It was just a username when they asked me, when I was asked, so I added the first thing that came to my mind. And then I regretted it because I'm like, I hope I can still change it at some point. But then you kind of can have an invite link here as well, which is basically you can use this link to invite your friends into the units token economy so that they can create their own token, or basically how do you call it, participate in the economy of your own basically token. And every single time, let's say that you invite someone, let's say, you also get 0.5% of the transactions as a reward for you of that person, that the person does basically into your own unit basically wallet. That's more or less it. Here you have the invite link, of course. If they have an email, you use an email basically instead. That's more or less it. We still have 8 minutes. Maybe we can dedicate them to questions instead. Are there any questions?
Yes.
So
Lona wants to know. Lona wants to know, how do we figure the amount to fundraise for a token? And also, is there a tried and true formula one could use to figure that out?
That's a good question.
And lastly, does the type of token impact the amount one would fundraise?
Okay, that's good questions. So firstly, there is no formula that I'm aware of, but it's more like, okay, let's say you have your own economy or your own business that you would like to start, or your own DAO, right? What are, let's say, the costs perhaps also that you would need in order to, how do you call it, to start this business? Think of it a bit like in traditional businesses, let's say, right? When you start a business, maybe you would need an office, right? Or maybe not, you can maybe have a co-working space in the beginning because you don't know how much money you will be making. So it's better to cut your costs down, of course, as well. Or maybe you do not even need a co-working space. Maybe you can give your own, depending, of course, on each country's laws, maybe you can give your own house's address as your business address in the beginning and change it afterwards once you, how do you call it, once you become a bit bigger, right? So, but let's take the office example. So let's say you need $1,000 per month for the office space, right? Then you need perhaps employees, you need furniture for the office, you need all these kinds of things, right? So you kind of come up with how much you would need basically in terms of making this happen, and what your running costs would be. And then you can create basically, you know, with the token, basically, once you sell it, you kind of can use also then the money to, how do you call it, to build the business basically, right? So that's more or less how it kind of works, right? So you have to kind of like figure it out yourself in terms of what you would like to do, what are the costs, and so forth. And Agama, what was the second question, if I may ask? Because I didn't hear it well.
Okay. Does the type of token impact the amount one would fundraise?
Well, it depends on what you mean, because if it is a stable coin, of course, yes, because then each coin is $1 or one of whatever currency you're using, right? Maybe it is the naira, let's say, which is the currency of Nigeria. I do not remember by heart what the exchange rate of $1 to a naira is, but you can say something like one stable coin is 1 naira or so, basically, right? And that would impact it because it's a bit different than having a currency that is like Bitcoin, which starts from, let's say, 0, or you set the price that people would buy it from you. So that impacts it, right? So that would be one impact that I could basically see, right? Another impact would be perhaps what kind of type of token that would be as well, right? Like it can be a utility token, it could be a security token, it could be a cryptocurrency, like let's say Bitcoin or so forth, right? So it depends on what you would like to do with the currency and what you would like it to represent, basically. I hope that answers the question. We still have 4 minutes, so I would like to ask more questions, and I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, there are a few more questions, and someone wants to know, between initial coin offering and crowdfunding for a token, which one amongst the two fundraising is more sustainable?
Traditional crowdfunding or token fundraising? That's what, or which of the two? Okay, so that's two good questions, right? So when it comes to token fundraising, it's better because it's easier, right? You do not have intermediaries. You just create a token and you fundraise with it instead of basically using an intermediary where you have to do a lot of paperwork, where you have to basically ask for permission as well, right? So let's say you're someone who, for whatever reason, cannot have a bank account for whatever reason, right? Then you will not be able to fundraise. This can be for different reasons that you do not have a bank account, right? Maybe you could be a really serious criminal, and so for that case, your country decided to freeze your bank account, and then you do not basically have a bank account, right? But then if you are someone whose banking system has failed them within their own country and they cannot open a bank account, or if the bank itself is very corrupt or taking a lot of fees for every single fundraise that you're doing, then obviously in that case the token fundraising is better. And the reason also it's better is because, as Michael yesterday said, let's say I said Naira before, right? So let's take Nigeria again as an example. So let's say you're a young entrepreneur in Nigeria, you want to fundraise for your startup. What happens is that in Nigeria, you would only be able to fundraise within Nigeria, right? So within the circle of VCs in Nigeria, right? So it's the pool of investors that you get with traditional means is just the people within your own country, whether that's Nigeria, United States, Greece, where I'm from, or wherever else, right? With a token, what happens is you get to fundraise from all the people in the world. You can even fundraise, as you saw now with Unit, right? You kind of see all the people within Unit, and if you know them, they're all over the world, right? So you kind of get access to them, to their liquidity or to their money, of course, as well, in order to fundraise, which is not available in a traditional financial system, because normally you would not be able to know these people, if I would be in Greece and I would go through the traditional, let's say, route of fundraising, then I would not know Michael, I would not know you guys. But in this case, I can say, hey guys, I have this brilliant idea of a restaurant or something, right? I want to fundraise, I don't know, 100,000 euro in order to open it. And I can ask you all how many people are here, 30 participants, right? I can ask you all 30 to chip in a little bit in order to get a token in return, basically, which would represent a piece of my business, right? Which is not possible in a, as I said, in a traditional way where you kind of have just a few VCs, whether it's Greece or Nigeria or the United States, that give you basically the money. Does that answer the question? Okay, it's 5 o'clock. Maybe we can still have one last question. Maybe we can go over time for one more question. And then we can,
all right.
I can wish you all a happy new year.
Yeah, so our final question here will be from Emmanuel, who wants to know if tokens created on Unit Network can be listed on other centralized or decentralized exchanges.
Could you repeat the question, because I didn't hear it well?
Emmanuel wants to know if tokens created on Unit Network could be listed on other centralized or decentralized exchanges.
Yes, that's yes, that is something that can be done, of course, as well. Because if you go, for instance, let me share my screen really quickly. If you go on, I think CoinGecko, right, or CoinMarketCap, if you go on units, for instance, we're, oh no, this is Uniswap, Unit Network. You kind of can see it here as well, right? So you can, why is this? Oh, okay, so this is French, right? So I don't know why is everything in French here, but we basically listed the unit token or currency here. And you could do basically the same. We still have not provided all the information that is needed because we're still working on everything, but you could absolutely do that as well. You could reach out to CoinGecko. We're also listed on CoinMarketCap, so you could also reach out to them. And I wasn't the one responsible for the listing, so I'm not sure what the exact process is, but I suppose you have to reach out to CoinGecko or to CoinMarketCap to list you here, and the same would go with Binance or any other centralized exchange, of course, as well. As for, yeah, that's more or less it, basically. So the short answer is yes, and the long answer was the one that I gave you just now. So this is it, because, you know, guys, it's already 2:05. I don't, you know, it's already, well, almost New Year's Eve and everything. I would not want to keep you all from your families and everything. So thank you all for being here. I hope you learned something new here now. I hope the questions that you asked, you kind of got a satisfactory response from me. And I wish you all a happy new year, of course, as well.
Yeah. And so we're taking a group photograph, right, to mark the end of this cohort and just to help us round up the live session. So it's amazing. Thank you all for turning on your cameras. I expect to see more cameras turned on and see your beautiful and great faces. Okay. So, and Alex, if you can also do it from your end, that would be nice. I'm trying to do it here also.
Do what?
Like take a screenshot?
Yes, indeed.
Right.
So I'll take one now as well. All right, it's taken.
Great. I think there are 2 pages. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Happy New Year, everyone, in advance.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Enjoy.
Happy New Year. Happy New Year. Thank you all for this great course. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you all so much.
Happy New Year.
Thank
Thank you.
Claim all 6 certificates.
Amazing. Thank you, Masters.
Don't forget to claim your certificates for the cohort. You need all 6 of them. Yeah, and so your personalized certificates should be sent out by next week. A great way to start the year.
Gama, you're very wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thank you all so much. And
Thank you. Bye-bye.
make sure to invite your friends, your family members, your colleagues to join the next cohort starting on January 22nd. It's sameunitmasters.org. Bye, everyone.
Yay.